One basketball play, 2 seconds of contact, and a single social media post that turned a routine ejection into one of the most explosive controversies the WNBA has seen all season. By the time the final buzzer sounded, nobody was talking about the score anymore. They were talking about DJ Carrington, Sophie Cunningham, and a tweet that quite literally changed the entire conversation mid-game. If you think you already know this story, you probably only know half of it, because what happened on that court was just the beginning. Let's get into it. The Chicago Sky and the Indiana Fever were already locked in an intense matchup when the moment happened. Sophie Cunningham was pushing ahead on a fast break, open court, full speed, eyes on the basket. She went up for the layup, drew the foul, and completed the play. But the contact that came with it wasn't the kind referees wave off and move on from. DJ Carrington came in from behind and made high contact, the kind that makes you wince even watching it back on replay. Cunningham went down. The whistle blew, and what followed wasn't a simple foul call, it was a full review. Officials pulled the play and examined it frame by frame. What they determined was that the contact wasn't just hard, it was unnecessary, it was excessive. And under WNBA rules, that combination means one thing: flagrant 2, automatic ejection. Carrington's night was over before most fans had even finished processing what they'd just seen. And here's what's interesting about that part of the story. Fever coach Stephanie White supported the decision. She agreed the call was correct, but she also made a point of saying she didn't believe Carrington acted with deliberate malicious intent. That distinction matters more than people give it credit for. Dangerous contact and deliberate intent to injure are not the same thing. Professional basketball moves at a speed most people can't fully appreciate from the stands. Players make split-second decisions constantly, and sometimes those decisions go wrong in ways that have serious consequences. That's exactly why the flagrant foul rules exist in the first place. The rules aren't designed only for players who want to hurt someone. They exist because certain types of contact are dangerous regardless of what was going on inside the player's head. So by the letter of the rules, the ejection was clean, reviewable, defensible, and supported even by the opposing coach. Under normal circumstances, this would have been a story for about 12 hours. A highlight clip, some debate, and then on to the next game. But Carrington didn't go quietly to the locker room, and that's where everything shifted. This is the part that took a basketball controversy and launched it into a completely different dimension. After being ejected and walking off the court, DJ Carrington did something that nobody saw coming. While the game was still being played, while her teammates were still on the floor, she picked up her phone and posted 2 words directed at the Indiana Fever: white privilege. That's it. No explanation, no context, no elaboration, just those 2 words posted from inside the building while the clock was still running on the game she'd just been removed from. The reaction was immediate, and it was massive. Within minutes, the post was being screenshotted, reposted, and debated across every sports platform you can name. And here's why the timing made it so much more explosive than the foul itself. Because a flagrant 2 ejection is something people can discuss using basketball language. Angles, contact, rules, precedent. People can disagree, but there's a framework. The moment you introduce a racial accusation into the conversation, the entire framework changes. Now it's not about the play anymore. Now it's about officiating bias, about how players are treated differently, about whether the league protects certain athletes over others. Those are serious claims, and serious claims require serious evidence. The problem was that the post came without any of that. No specifics, no context, no explanation of exactly what Carrington believed happened or why she believed it. Just the accusation, dropped into the internet like a match into gasoline, while the game she was supposed to be playing in continued without her. Some fans immediately understood it as an emotional reaction from an athlete who felt she'd been treated unfairly. Others saw it something harder to defend, a public accusation made in the heat of the moment without the kind of support that a claim like that genuinely requires. And a significant number of people, particularly those who'd been watching Cunningham's season closely, saw it through an entirely different lens, because Sophie Cunningham didn't arrive at this controversy without her own baggage, and that context is something you can't separate from this story. Before the Carrington foul happened, Sophie Cunningham was already one of the most polarizing players in the league, not because of anything that happened on the court, but because of what she'd been saying off it.
Shedeur Sanders has that instinct. Watch him work through a practice session, and you'll see a quarterback who is constantly adjusting his release point, his arm speed, in the arc of every throw based on the specific needs of that specific play. When there's a window closing quickly, he zips it in there with authority. When a receiver is running away from him on a deep route with space ahead of him, he puts touch on it so his guy can run under it in stride. When he's checking down to a running back in space, it's soft enough that the back doesn't have to break stride. None of this is accidental. None of it is instinctive in the sense that he was simply born knowing how to do it. It's the product of film study, elite coaching, and years of developing a complete understanding of what the game actually demands at the highest level. That kind of nuance in a young quarterback is extraordinarily difficult to teach. You can teach footwork, you can teach progressions, you can teach protection recognition, but the feel for the football, the internal calibration for exactly how much to put on every throw, that has to be developed over time through deep, intentional work. The fact that Shedeur Sanders is already operating at this level in year 2 tells you everything you need to know about the kind of player he is and the kind of work he puts in when nobody is watching. Let's talk about decision-making, because this is where young quarterbacks most often fall apart. The physical tools can be there, the work ethic can be there, the accuracy can be there, but if a quarterback can't process information fast enough at the professional level, if he can't identify what a defense is showing him, understand what it means, and adjust before the snap count ends, none of the rest of it matters. The NFL defense is specifically designed to disguise its intentions until the last possible moment and then punish any quarterback who guessed wrong. Shedeur Sanders is not guessing, he is diagnosing. Throughout training camp, what has stood out about his decision-making isn't just that he's making good choices, it's how quickly and consistently he's making them. He's identifying coverages at the line, he's recognizing when a safety is rotating late and adjusting his read accordingly. He's seeing where the free rusher is coming from and getting the ball out before it becomes a problem. He's not locking onto his first option and hoping it opens up. He's cycling through his progressions with purpose and moving on when a look isn't there. And just as importantly, he's accepting what the defense gives him. This is something that sounds obvious, but is genuinely rare in young quarterbacks. When a coverage takes away his first 2 reads, he's not forcing it. He's not trying to make something happen out of nothing because he wants the big play. He's taking the check down. He's sliding to the next available throw. He's keeping the drive alive and protecting the football because he understands that a completion underneath is infinitely more valuable than an incompletion, or worse, a turnover on a ball thrown into coverage. That's veteran-level thinking. That's the kind of decision-making that keeps offenses on the field, keeps drives moving, and keeps coaches' blood pressure at a manageable level. The fact that a second-year quarterback is consistently playing that way throughout training camp isn't just impressive, it's remarkable. And it speaks to something that goes beyond what any coaching staff can install in a player. It speaks to a football mind that is genuinely elite. Bullet points and analysis can only tell part of the story. Let's talk about specific moments, because this is where abstract praise becomes concrete evidence. The deep ball to Casey Thompkins was one of the defining moments of training camp. Shedeur dropped back, felt the pressure without being rattled by it, stepped up in the pocket, and launched a ball downfield with the kind of placement that takes everyone's breath away. Not because it was a hard throw, because it was a perfect throw. Thompkins didn't have to break stride, didn't have to slow down or adjust, didn't have to make a contested catch on the move. The ball was exactly where it needed to be, at exactly the right time, dropping into his hands at the top of his route so he could turn and run.
That's what a deep ball from a franchise quarterback looks like. It's not just powerful, it's precise.
Then there are the plays to Denzel Boston in tight coverage, which might actually be more impressive from a technical standpoint. Boston is a receiver who can make contested catches because of his physical tools, but Shedeur has been consistently making those contested catches easier by putting the ball in spots where only Boston can get it. Inside the numbers against zone coverage, Shedeur is finding the crease, hitting Boston between the numbers and the sideline, placing the ball at a height and angle that takes the defender completely out of the equation. Those aren't prayers. Those aren't let my guy make a play throws. Those are intelligent, calculated deliveries that demonstrate a quarterback who fully understands where the ball needs to go to give his receiver the best possible chance. And then there's the underneath game, which almost never gets the attention it deserves, but is where games are actually won. Shedeur's checkdowns have been sharp and on time. His quick hitters to the slot have been delivered with almost metronomic precision on the timing routes. He's moving the chains on plays that don't generate highlights, and he's doing it consistently enough that the offense has been able to build real momentum in team sessions. That's not a guy filling a role, that's a quarterback running an offense. Here's where things get really interesting, because any quarterback can look good when everything goes according to plan, when the offensive line holds, the receivers run clean routes, and the defense gives a soft look. Almost every quarterback in the building can execute. The separation happens when things go sideways, when a lineman gets beaten, when a receiver runs the wrong route, when two defenders are where there should only be one, when the play that was drawn up on the whiteboard bears zero resemblance to what's actually happening in front of him. That's where Shedeur Sanders is doing something genuinely special. When the pocket collapses, he doesn't panic. He climbs, he slides, he buys himself an extra half second by moving laterally inside the pocket, and in that half second, he continues to scan the field. He's not just trying to escape, he's still going through his reads on the move, still looking for an open receiver downfield, still processing information even as the game gets chaotic around him. And when he does decide to take off with his legs, it's a decision, not a panic response. He knows when to go, and he knows when to keep looking. This is the kind of play that modern defenses absolutely cannot scheme against. When a quarterback can extend plays with his mobility and continue to operate as a passer while doing it, defensive coordinators lose sleep. You can't just bring an extra rusher because he'll escape the pocket and find the open man. You can't drop everyone into coverage because he'll tuck it and pick up yards with his legs. Shedeur Sanders is already forcing that dilemma on defenses in training camp, which means by the time the regular season arrives, opposing coordinators are going to have a very uncomfortable fall. And when things don't work out, when a play breaks down completely and there's nothing available, he eats it. He takes the sack or throws it away and lines up for the next play with exactly the same energy he brought to the previous one. No frustration on his face, no sideline meltdown, no visible effect on the very next rep. That's composure. That's the mental discipline that turns good quarterbacks into great ones. Talent gets you in the door, but what keeps a quarterback at the top of the depth chart, what earns him the respect of his teammates and coaches, what builds the kind of locker room culture that wins games in January, is none of the physical stuff. It's the mental and emotional infrastructure that a player brings to work every single day. Shedeur Sanders is bringing it in ways that are impossible to ignore. Start with coachability. When the coaching staff pulls him aside after a rep, when they point out something they want adjusted, he doesn't get defensive. He doesn't offer an explanation or make an excuse. He nods, absorbs, and executes the correction on the very next rep. That sounds like the bare minimum, but you'd be shocked how many talented players struggle to do exactly that. The ability to receive criticism without ego, process it immediately, and apply it in real time is a skill. It's also a personality trait, and it's one that coaches absolutely treasure because it means the player is genuinely invested in improvement rather than just in being right.
Then there's the work ethic, which has been as consistent as his play. First one on the field, last one to leave, staying after official practice ends to get extra work in with receivers, building timing and chemistry through repetition rather than just assuming it'll develop on its own. studying film, watching coverages, understanding not just what the play calls for, but why the play works and what happens to the offense when the defense tries to take it away. That level of preparation shows up on the field in ways that casual observers might not notice, but coaches and teammates absolutely do. And then there's the leadership, which might be the most surprising thing, given that this is a second-year player. In the huddle, Shedeur Sanders carries himself like someone who has been running this offense for 5 years. His teammates respond to him, not because they're told to, not because the organization has anointed him, because he has earned their respect through the way he prepares, the way he communicates, and the way he performs when it counts. Guys who have been in this league longer than him are following his lead naturally, organically, because they believe in him. You cannot manufacture that. It either exists or it doesn't, and in Shedeur Sanders' case, it clearly exists. At some point, fairness requires acknowledging that there are other quarterbacks in this competition, so let's acknowledge them. And then, let's be completely clear about where things actually stand. DeShaun Watson has had moments in camp where he looked like the experienced quarterback he once was, but those moments have been scattered across a backdrop of serious inconsistency. In the first 3 days of camp alone, he threw 6 interceptions. 6! He has looked confused at times. He has missed throws that a quarterback at his experience level simply cannot miss. Whatever version of DeShaun Watson showed up to Cleveland Browns training camp this summer, it is not the version that justifies keeping him ahead of a quarterback who is outperforming him on a daily basis. The narrative that Watson is the safe, experienced choice falls apart completely when the experienced quarterback is turning the ball over at that rate. Dillon Gabriel has shown genuine improvement in his second year and deserves credit for that. He's more comfortable in the system, he's making better decisions than he was as a rookie, but comfortable and better are not the same as ready, and they are certainly not the same as what Shedeur Sanders is doing on the field. Gabriel is developing, Sanders is already operating. Those are two very different things, and the gap between them right now is significant. Talon Green is a young player with real upside, and in a different situation, in a different year, there would be a real conversation to be had about his development, but that conversation doesn't apply to right now. Green is nowhere near ready to be handed a starting position on an NFL team, and anyone suggesting otherwise is doing the young man a disservice by rushing a development process that takes time. The competition is over. It was over before it got started, honestly, given what Shedeur Sanders has put on tape over these 7 days of camp. By every measure that matters, he is the best quarterback on this roster. It isn't particularly close. Something interesting happens when genuine talent shows up on a practice field. The people who are there to watch it, the fans who make the drive to training camp on a weekday morning, who stand behind the ropes in the summer heat just to watch a practice session, they can feel it before they can articulate it. They can feel when something special is happening in front of them. That's what's been happening in Cleveland. The energy around Shedeur Sanders at training camp has been organic and electric. When he makes a throw that threads a needle between 2 defenders and hits a receiver perfectly in stride, the crowd reacts like it's a playoff game. When he rolls out of a collapsing pocket and drops it in a bucket 30 yards downfield, people are turning to each other, asking the same question. Did you see that? You can't engineer that kind of response. You can't buy it or manufacture it or create it through a marketing campaign. It's the natural reaction of people watching something special unfold in front of them. The media narrative is shifted too, and that shift matters. Before camp opened, the coverage around Shedeur Sanders was framed almost entirely around questions. Can he handle the speed of the professional game? Will the pressure of an NFL depth chart affect his performance? Is he ready? Those questions have been answered so thoroughly and so consistently that analysts aren't really asking them anymore. The conversation now is about upside, it's about potential, it's about what this quarterback could become over the course of a full NFL career. That is a fundamentally different conversation, and it reflects the reality of what he's shown on the field.
The only party that hasn't fully caught up to what everyone else is already seeing is the organization itself. And that needs to change.
Not because of fan pressure, not because of media coverage, because every day that passes without a clear commitment to Shedeur Sanders as the starting quarterback is a day of preparation that he should be getting and isn't. Quarterbacks need to prepare for week 1 knowing they're the starter. They need to build their mental reps, their confidence, their week 1 game plan with full certainty about their role. Every day of ambiguity costs something, and there is no longer any legitimate reason for the ambiguity to exist. Step back and look at the full picture of what Shedeur Sanders has given Cleveland Browns fans and the organization over these 7 days of training camp, and it becomes overwhelming. Elite accuracy on nearly every throw, rare touch and velocity calibration that takes most quarterbacks years to develop, professional-level decision-making and processing speed, ball placement that elevates every receiver on the roster, mobility that extends plays and creates problems for defenses, ice-cold composure when the structure around him breaks down, tireless work ethic before and after every practice, a coachability that makes coaches want to invest in him, natural leadership that has already earned the respect of his teammates, and the physical tools to back it all up. At what point does the conversation end? At what point does the evidence become overwhelming enough that we stop asking questions and start building around the answer? Because that point for anyone paying honest attention to what's happening at Browns training camp is already here. Shedeur Sanders isn't auditioning anymore, he's demonstrating. There's a difference. Auditions are for players who need to prove they belong. Demonstrations are for players who have already proved it and are now showing everyone what's possible, what the ceiling looks like, what the future of this franchise could actually become if the right decision gets made at the right time. The Cleveland Browns haven't had a quarterback like this in a very long time, maybe ever. The kind of quarterback who walks into a training camp in year 2 and makes everyone around him better before the regular season even starts. The kind of quarterback who earns his teammates' trust not through seniority, but through consistent excellence. The kind of quarterback that makes you feel, for the first time in a long time, like this organization actually has something real to build around. All of that is already here. It's already on the field, on tape, in the reactions of fans and teammates and coaches and analysts. Everything points in one direction. The only question left is whether the Cleveland Browns will have the courage to follow where the evidence leads, stop hesitating, stop managing a competition that has already been decided, and hand this franchise to the quarterback who has already proven he's ready to carry it. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't waiting for permission, he's already doing the job. The organization just needs to make it official. What do you think? Has Shedeur Sanders done enough to lock up the starting job in Cleveland? Is there any legitimate argument left for keeping the competition open? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this breakdown gave you something to think about, make sure you're subscribed because we're covering this story every step of the way. The Browns finally have their quarterback. It's time everyone started acting like it.